Hello, welcome to the Manta Trends webinar series. My name is Ivy Lamb, and I'll be your host for today's event, Credit Card Processing, How to Save Money and Improve Sales. Whether you currently accept cards or are wondering whether it's worth setting up a merchant account, this webinar is for you. In this short session, you'll gain inside advice for evaluating merchant processing options and how to save money. We're happy to have you with us today, and we'd like to thank Platinum Payment Systems for sponsoring today's event. Before we dive in, I want to cover some important housekeeping items about the event. During the webinar, you should see a slide area, which will allow you to view the webinar. You'll also see 3 tabs: Ask a Question, Attachments, and Rate This. Click on the Ask a Question tab to submit a question at any time during the webinar. We'll do our best to respond during the Q&A at the end of the event. Under the Attachments tab, you'll find more resources and educational materials related to today's topic. Go to Rate This to leave us feedback on the presentation, and you can tweet about today's event using the hashtag MantaTrends. If you're having technical problems, please email webinarhelp@manta.com. My colleague Graham is on hand answering your technical questions, so just send him a note. Now on to today's presentation. I'm excited to introduce our guest expert, Ryan Ellefsen. In 2009, Ryan started National Processing Services as a processing solution for his company and others like him. In 2012, NPS merged with another company and became Platinum Payment Systems. Ryan's unique view of credit card processing from both the merchant and the bank perspective has made him an invaluable source of information for businesses interested in or already accepting credit card sales. Here's a quick overview of what we'll cover today. Ryan will talk about how accepting credit cards can help your business and important factors to consider when choosing a merchant processor. Then, he'll get into some more detailed information about gateways, pricing models, and platforms like PayPal, all with an eye towards getting you the best rate for your business. Now, I'll hand things over to you, Ryan.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, hopefully everybody can hear me well. I appreciate being here today. And I'm going to get to a number of topics. So as you can see, choosing a merchant processor, what are the important things to look for? What's a gateway? Why does it matter? Do you need one? And then we'll just spend some time on how pricing works, because I know that's what interests a lot of you. And a quick summary of when to use PayPal, when to use Square, and when to use a merchant account. And so we'll just go quickly through those things. First, just want to let you know kind of my background just a little more is I started out as a merchant, and so worked managing a couple hundred merchant accounts for a large marketing business, and that's really what got me into this space, and been in this space for about 11 years. And so we started Platinum Payment Systems as a solution to all of the ambiguous rules and arbitrary fines and fees and holds and the complications of dealing with banks. And so we started this to help ourselves and to make life easier, and started signing up all of our friends and helping them. And pretty soon, next thing we know, we're number 1,032 on the Inc. 5000 last year. So we're pretty excited about our growth. But I think it's important to understand that we come from a merchant background. So I think I understand the pains of being a merchant. I'm not just a banker trying to speculate, if you will. So I want to talk quickly then about some of these things. First of all, why is it important to take credit cards? And I don't want to spend too much time here, but if you're not taking credit cards currently, sometimes people worry about the cost. Yes, there is a cost to taking credit cards. But credit card processing legitimizes your business. I mean, when you accept credit cards, you step up and become one of the big boys and girls. You get a lot of legitimacy. You now compete with your competitors who are taking credit cards. Obviously, you can boost credit card sales, especially online. It's hard to take a check online. It actually, in addition to increasing your sales, it increases impulse buys. So, you know, I worked in the carpet cleaning industry for a long time, and we didn't take credit cards for a while, and then we started offering credit cards. So service industries, huge upswing in business when you take credit cards because of those impulse buys, upsells. It's a lot easier to sell somebody a spot remover after you've done the work if there's the ability to take credit cards there. So just a lot of reasons why taking credit cards is really good. It increases the cash flow, very convenient for shoppers. You don't have to work with all of the invoicing. And so if you're not currently accepting credit cards and you have any questions about why you should or shouldn't, I'm certainly available after this webinar to answer any of those questions. Moving on to the next slide, relationship and trust. For a lot of guys on this phone and gals on this call, cost is going to be the most important thing. And you're worried about your rates and you want to keep those rates as low as possible. And depending on your business type, that may be the most important thing to you. If you're in one of the mid to high risk areas, if you do high ticket events or future deliverables or trial offers or continuity billing, you know, you're more interested in relationship and having a good relationship with a processor where you can get somebody on the phone quickly and easily that knows you and knows your business. That's going to be a lot more important to you. If you're a retail client, then you're getting 5-6 people a month coming by, beating you up, trying to get your business. And so for you, rates may be the most important thing. But I just want to tell you that relationship is, in my opinion, a lot more important than rates. And I have some of my own companies, and for me, relationship's more important. Having somebody that I can call, having someone, a customer yesterday said, hey, how can I get a decline emails to go to one person in my company and to get the rest of the reports to go to another person in my company? And that person was just able to call a number, speak with someone that they know, and get that done very quickly, as opposed to going through an 800 number and hoping you're routed to the right place and hoping somebody understands your business. So it's just a peace of mind thing. When you do credit card processing, you definitely want to have the relationship then. The rates are extremely important, and technology. We'll talk a little, you guys have probably heard EMV, you know, the chip that's in everybody's cards now, and there's a lot of questions about those chips. I don't have a lot of time to go into that today, but the quick and easy about that, I'll go into at the end of this webinar, and I'll just kind of tell you what you need to do as far as that chip is concerned. And I'll tell it to you straight. Some of you may or may not need to worry about that at this point. So technology, rates, and relationship are all really important, and I wouldn't get too fixated on one of those. For those of you that are using a gateway, and that's most of you, unless you are, in fact, even if you're a retail processor and you're getting swiped cards, you're still probably using a gateway behind the scenes. If you're an online processor, you're absolutely using a gateway, probably Authorize.net or an NMI gateway of some sort. Just so you know, the gateway is not your processor. So we run into this all the time. You've got a gateway, which is really just a bridge, an electronic bridge or gateway between your website and the merchant processor. So, for example, if Platinum Payment Systems was your processor, we would connect you to Authorize.net, which connects to us, just as an example of a gateway, and then Authorize.net connects to your shopping cart. So that way, all the shopping carts in the world don't have to go out and integrate with all the back-end processors in the world. The gateways kind of act as the translators or the bridge between those shopping carts and the banks. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, if you've got further questions, let me know. But that's how a gateway works. So let's talk about pricing. I know everybody's interested in this. So in order to understand pricing, you need to understand something called interchange. Interchange is a government/acquiring bank legislated fee that covers all credit card processing, and everybody has to pay interchange. Look at interchange as cost. Okay, so cost is interchange, and it's complicated. There are over 700 interchange rates, and some of that is on purpose. Okay, so if you've ever looked at a credit card processing statement, you know it's extremely confusing, and there are lots of different pricing models and lots of different interchange rates. So as long as you know that interchange is the same for every credit card processor out there, it'll help you kind of understand how rates work and why a credit card processor can say, I can beat everybody's rates. You can say that, it's just your willingness as a processor to go cheaper than the next guy, just like in any other business. But nobody can get cheaper than interchange because that's cost. If you want to, by the way, to go out and find interchange rates, you can just look them up online. If you're ever really super bored and you want to see all those interchange rates, you can find them online. So right now we're looking at a discount rate model. There are two ways of pricing a merchant account. They're both based on interchange. One is called a discount rate model, and the other is called cost plus or interchange plus. So this is a discount rate model that I'm showing you right here, and this is what most of you on the phone are used to on this webinar. If you look down the left side of this slide, you'll see a percentage. Those are basis points, so 1.6%, and then cents, 10 cents a transaction. So this is just a small sampling of interchange rates, and remember, there are over 700 of them. So as you can see, 1.6% and 10 cents may apply to one type of card, whereas 2.3 and 10 cents might apply to another type of card. And it goes as high on here as 2.7 and 10 cents a transaction. Now, interchange rates are determined by different card types, different products and services, different delivery methods, whether it's online or whether it's a phone sale or whether it's a swiped transaction, the type of card, whether it's a rewards card. So there are all types of interchange rates. And then Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover all have their own interchange rates. Even though a lot of them are in the same association, that's why you have hundreds and hundreds of rates. So the most common way for a credit card processor to price you is to speak with you on the phone, get some understanding of your business, and then ballpark where the credit card processor believes that your rates are going to fit in. So if I were speaking to one of you and talking about your business, I would hypothesize where your interchange rates were going to come in. And it's an educated guess based on the type of business you have and your volumes. So if you are, then what I would do is I would take all of the possible interchange rates that I thought you might get, and I would line them up from smallest to largest, kind of like I have here on this screen. So 1.6 to 2.7. And then I would bucket those into a qualified and a non-qualified rate. So here's the most important takeaway from today's call if you're on a discount rate model. Do not get fooled by one really small rate, okay? Because I was talking to, for example, I spoke to a gentleman the other day in a meeting, and he said to me, well, what can you guys do? What's your rate? And it's funny because just that question, what's your rate, shows really a misunderstanding of how rates work. Because the most popular thing for a bank to do is to give you their rate, which is a single rate. So I could have said to him, oh, our rate's fantastic. It's for retail, it's 1.6, and for Moto or online, it's 2.25. So I'm just throwing those numbers out. Those are good rates. However, those don't tell the whole story because that's simply the qualified rate. There's also what's called a non-qualified rate, and here's how that works. I take all your interchange rates and I line them up, and I say, okay, if I think you're going to come in at 1.6 to about a 2.25, And if you're following the chart, you can see that's about halfway down. Any interchange rates that come in, any charges on your account that fall into that range, I'm going to charge you 2.25% and 20 cents a transaction, which, as you can see then, if you come in at 1.6, if somebody uses a credit card that comes in at the interchange rate of 1.6 and 10 cents, then I make a 65 basis point spread and 10 cents. On the other hand, if somebody uses a different card and it comes in at 2.25 and 10 cents, I'm only making 10 cents on that transaction. And my cost to you, my qualified rate, is a wash because it's the same as interchange. So if you understand that, that's kind of how that buckets. What people don't understand is that anything above the 2.25, because the bank's not going to lose money, right? So anything above that doesn't fall into that qualified rate that they quoted you. That's going to go into what's called a non-qualified rate, and they hide that. Most banks, most salespeople, most ISOs, most processors do not disclose to you unless you ask them your non-qualified rate. So always, always, always ask, what is your non-qualified rate? If you're a retail customer, you'll actually have a mid-qualified rate as well, which means we'll just divide it into 3 buckets. So always find out what that is, because if any of you have ever been quoted a great rate and then looked at your credit card processing statement and wondered why your effective rate didn't equate to the amazing qualified rate you were quoted, that's why. It's because there are also mid-qualified rates and non-qualified rates, and you always have to know those. So those are bucketed. We'll go pretty fast through this next slide because the cost plus model is just what it says, or interchange plus. Instead of bucketing the different prices, this model just passes through the cost of interchange to you and then adds on a little bit extra for the merchant processor. And that's why it's called cost plus or interchange plus. So if you look at the example, let's just take the top line. If your cost or interchange rate is 1.6 and 10 cents, then your pricing might be cost plus 30 basis points and 10 cents, which is about 1/3% and 10 cents. So you would just get that passed through and you'd end up paying 1.9% and 20 cents for that transaction. They're just different ways of pricing. Neither one is better than the other one, at least as it relates to all accounts. However, there are some business models that work better on a cost-plus model, that work better for you, the customer, and there are some that work better on a discount rate. And so that's why it's important that you know there are 2 options and that you understand why. And just the really quick answer for everybody is if you do a lot of transactions and you have a lot of debit cards, you absolutely should be on a cost-plus model. Okay, so if your price point is under $100, even if it's under $200, you should be on cost plus. If you're doing a lot of transactions, you should be on cost plus. If you're a bigger ticket client with large, say $5,000 to $10,000 ticket prices or future deliverables, then you should be on a discount rate. And then of course there's everything in the middle, and I'm happy to help discuss that with you. But it's important that you know you have those options. You need to choose a pricing model that fits your business, and you need to be educated on the fact that there are different pricing models. Okay, so a cost plus pricing model is a little more complicated to follow on your merchant statement because it'll list out all of the interchange rates and then it'll show your pricing. But that's good because you'll see exactly what your rates are, exactly what the markup is, and it's very transparent. On the other hand, the discount rate, way of doing it is a much easier statement to read, but it may or may not be the right thing for you. But just remember, just because it's transparent doesn't mean you're not being ripped off transparently. So always be educated and understand what fees on your statements are necessary and what fees are just on there to help pad the pockets of your bank. Let's talk about some really quick tips for you. Continuity billing. If you are doing continuity billing and rebilling or recurring billing, you should be collecting the CVV code and you should be collecting AVS, which is address verification. There are some reasons for which you might not want to do CVV, and we could discuss that offline if you're interested, but for the most part, that will actually lower your interchange rate. It will also lower your fraud rate. It'll lower your refund and chargeback rate. In some cases, it'll also lower your conversion rate, so it's important to know when to use those and when not, and I can be a resource if you're interested. PCI compliance is a big industry buzzword. I know that a lot of you are hearing a lot about that. You do have to be PCI compliant. It is important to become PCI compliant and here's the bottom line on that. PCI compliance helps protect you, the customer. It also is now shifting liability to you, the customer. As of last October, you now take on that liability if you're not PCI compliant. Now, we can talk offline about the fact that there's still some liability, even if you are PCI compliant. It's not the end-all, be-all of compliance. It is simply what the industry expects you to do. Check your statements, by the way. One of the biggest tricks in the book is for processors to charge you for compliance and also charge you for non-compliance. We see it every day, and that's just a ripoff. So look for that. Monthly discounts versus daily. That simply means you can have all of your fees taken out daily or taken out at the end of the month. I just put this on here because a lot of you may not know you have the option. And it's a lot easier if, for some people, it's a whole lot easier just to keep the money in the account and at the end of the month, take those fees out. That way what goes into your account every day is exactly what you would expect. It's easier for your accountant. So especially if you have a lot of continuity billing, which is rebilling, right? So if I sign you up for a $29.95 service and you're billed each month, $29.95, that's continuity billing. So that $29.95, when that hits the account, some of you might want to see $29.95 and then at the beginning of the next month be billed for those fees. Some of you might want to just have $28, $28.50 deposited into your account, but then you don't have to save the money. Just know you can do it either way. Make sure your descriptor has your business name that's recognizable, not your corporate name. Often corporations have products that your customers will recognize. Make sure that your descriptor on the merchant statements, on the credit card statements, has a phone number and the name of your product or the entity that they would recognize, okay? I put don't use local banks, and to be fair to local banks, it's not that the local banks do a bad job, it's that 95% of your local banks out there don't actually do your processing. They farm it off to a third party. So most of the local banks in the area that I'm in here use Wells Fargo or First Data. So they're farming you off to a large, bigger bank anyway. So your good friend, the teller there, who you've known for 20 years, and you go to the bank and you use them because they can help you, unfortunately, they can't really help you. So not a good thing to do. And then regular audits. Make sure you look at your merchant account statements because there are so many little fees that can be slipped in there. You just want to check that often. All right, we're to the questions. I tried to go as quickly as possible, so I didn't keep you all much longer than you'd hoped, but if there are any questions, I'm ready to answer those.
Thanks so much, Ryan, for going over all of that advice and tips. Very educational. And we do have some questions from the audience.
You bet.
The first question is, what do you recommend for a business with orders of several hundred to 2,500 with a mix of Visa, MasterCard, and Amex? Okay,
so I assume that when it says, what do you recommend, it's perhaps alluding to, is this a PayPal? Is this a, so I'm going to answer it that way. There is a place in the market for PayPal and Stripe. That tipping point is around $2,500. So if you're a merchant who does under $2,500 a month, Stripe and PayPal are actually better for you. They are less expensive. Even though they're more expensive, they have their rates are more expensive, but their monthly fees are cheaper. Does that make sense? So if you're not doing as much volume, if you're not charging as much volume, you're actually going to save money on the fees by not paying the monthly fees of a merchant processor. The time that flips is around $2,500. Once you're processing more than $2,500, you should use a merchant processor, because now, even though you're paying a monthly fee that you might not pay with Square or with Stripe or with PayPal, although PayPal I believe has one as well, you get such a cheaper rate that as your volume goes up, you should be using a merchant processor because it'll be cheaper for you. So right at $2,500, that's a tough call. It depends on whether you see yourself growing, and if you're going to grow, you should use a merchant account. If you're going to stay at that rate, go ahead and stay with PayPal or Square, because they're a good solution for that.
Thank you, Ryan.
You bet. Do you want, Ivy, do you want me to just read through a couple of these really fast and just knock them out as quickly as possible?
Sure.
Sure, so how's the best way to test PCI compliance? There are lots of groups that do that. You can have an audit. If you've got PCI compliance questions, one of the best ways is just to give me a call and let me understand your business type, because you might be able to get away just with a questionnaire. So they have a Schedule A questionnaire that you can fill out, and depending on how big your business is, you don't have to have audits, you don't have to have screening, and you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. It's fairly easy, and we can handle that for you, and it's free. So you may be able to get away with that. So if you're a small business, PCI compliance, it's hard to test it. You have to do audits, and those audits can be expensive. If you go online, just search for companies that do PCI audits, and they range from $25,000 to a few $100, depending on what you need. There's a question here that says, how to find the best rates for a very small business. So those best rates, it's going to come down to a matter of trust. So I hate to tell you that, but it's any credit card processor can beat any other credit card processor's pricing. That's just the reality of it. Now, there are huge conglomerates that can possibly have buy rates that exceed the buy rates of a small ISO, for example. So that big conglomerate may be able to beat somebody else by a few pennies as far as cost, but you're giving up customer service and business knowledge by doing that. So it really depends on your business, and honestly, you need to go with somebody that you can trust, somebody that's willing to educate you on all of the fee structure, and that's really the only way to do it. Other than that, you may be at the mercy of the sharks out there. So build that trust with somebody. When you look at a statement, when you look at a credit card statement, some of the things to look for is your effective rate. So take the number of fees that you've been billed. Just look at the bottom and find your total fees and divide it by the number of charges. And so you'll see that on the first page. It'll show you all of your Visa, American Express, Discover. It'll show you all your card types and what you ran. Take that gross number, not the net number, the gross number, okay, and then find your total fees, which will usually be on the last page of your statements. Divide the last number, your fees, by your gross payments, and that gives you your effective rate. If your effective rate is a lot higher than the rate you were quoted, then you should be concerned. At least that doesn't mean necessarily that you're being ripped off. It just means that you need maybe a little education on why the difference and what you're paying. Here's a question that says, do we have to have a machine that processes the new chip cards? That's a great one. Great question. I get this question a lot. The answer to that is maybe. You don't have to. Okay? All that happened is in October of last year, that shifted, that onus shifted to you, the merchant. So the credit card industry basically said, as of this date, we're no longer accepting liability for covering fraud on your accounts. And now we can argue the legality of them being able to do that, and obviously also argue whether or not that'll hold up in court. However, they are saying that, and they're now saying if you're not getting on the new chip card, you're not being EMV certified, which stands for Euro, MasterCard, Visa, you're not getting certified there, then we're not going to cover your liability. Okay? So, but you can still swipe cards. You can still accept cards without having to upgrade and without having to purchase an EMV certified machine. So I spoke with a gentleman yesterday who does about $2,500 a month, and he asked me, do I need to upgrade? And I said, no, I wouldn't upgrade if I were you, because what's the worst? I mean, if something goes wrong, his liability is so small, it's smaller than what he'd pay to upgrade to an EMV certified machine. So it's really up to you guys to just decide how much liability do you have. If you're a big corporation running millions of dollars, you absolutely need to make sure that you're EMV certified, because you're going to get better discount rates as well.
Ryan, I hate to cut you off, but we are just about out of time.
That's
Is there
okay.
any way that they can follow up with you on Twitter or?
You bet. Well, the easiest way to follow up with me would just be to send me an email, because some of these questions are going to be a little complicated. The easiest way to reach me is just Ryan, R-Y-A-N, at platpay.com, Platpay.com. They can also just go, Ivy, there's a page, I believe, right? The attachments. Do you want to talk about that really fast?
Yes. So everyone, if you would like a free audit, we have an offer from Platinum Payment Systems. Just go to the attachments section to find that link. And again, thank you to Platinum Payment Systems for sponsoring today's event. And thank you so much, Ryan, for that educational presentation.
You bet.
I want to remind everyone as well that if you'd like to revisit any part of this webinar, it will be available on demand within 24 hours. And be sure to check out Manta's other webinars, which are also linked in the attachments tab. So thanks everyone for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation.